the mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Trump was in Waco over the weekend, Waco, Texas. And, of course, that drew David Koresh snark from the D.C. press corps. Here's what he had to say about prosecutorial misconduct. He was talking about Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, but, of course, given all the investigations he's endured and all the prosecutors across who have trod across his path. It's certainly not limited to Alvin Bragg, but the importance or the problem that is the prosecutorial misconduct. Here's Trump.
But this is really prosecutorial misconduct. That's what it's called. The innocence of people makes no difference whatsoever to these radical left maniacs. It is worse, actually, in my opinion. Hard to believe anything could be worse than this, but I think it's worse than ballot stuffing or media manipulation by the FBI working together with Twitter, Facebook, and the rest. Remember when that came out 4 weeks ago, that the FBI was working to make sure that nothing bad is said about Biden, but as much bad as possible is said about Trump.
And he went on to sort of summarize all the things that have gone on over the last 7 years and give this characterization of where America stands at present.
A third world banana republic. That's what we've become. Between our borders, our elections, and the weaponization of law enforcement, banana republic. That's what we have become. Let there be no doubt the injustices being done, not only to me, but to dozens across our country will not stand, and we're not going to stand for it. When this election is over, I will be the President of the United States. You will be vindicated and proud, and the thugs and criminals who are corrupting our justice system will be defeated, discredited, and totally disgraced. That's what's happening. That's what's happening.
Still rallying the faithful, to be sure, and by some indications, he's reaping the benefits electorally of this curious gambit by the Manhattan DA. But that hasn't stopped John Hinderaker from saying, we Republicans should put Trump in the rearview mirror and move on to our party's serious candidates, of whom we have an abundance. Well, that is heretical in Trump world, to be sure, as John certainly knows. So let's talk to him about it. We're pleased to be joined by John Hinderaker. He is the president of the Center of the American Experiment, contributor to powerlineblog.com. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, glad to be with you, Dan.
You don't want to let this play out a little bit? You're ready to move on? You don't want to follow him on Truth Social?
Well, there's so much to be said, Dan. Let me just say a couple of quick things. Number one, there's this symbiotic relationship between Donald Trump and the Democrats. They want him constantly in the spotlight. They want him to be the face of the Republican Party. And, of course, that's fine with Trump. He loves to be in the spotlight. And this whole situation with Alvin Bragg in New York and the indictment that may or may not happen is typical of that. So it turns out that the source for the assumption that we all had that Donald Trump was going to be indicted by Alvin Bragg last week, turns out the source was Donald Trump. He claimed to have gotten leaks from the DA's office. Well, it turns out there has not been an indictment yet. And I think, Dan, I'm speculating here, but I think at least part of what's going on is that the Democrats are going back and forth about whether they want to indict Trump. On the one hand, their base wants nothing more than photographs of Trump in handcuffs. I mean, this would be, they're salivating over that. On the other hand,
Trump wants nothing more than a picture of him in handcuffs, too.
Right. Right, right, exactly. He wants to be the victim. He wants always to be the story. And I think the reason why the Democrats are hesitating is because they know that this theory that Alvin Bragg has trumped up is frankly ridiculous. And in all probability, if Bragg indicts Trump, the ultimate result of that is that Trump beats it and Bragg looks stupid, and it's one more time when Trump has frustrated his enemies.
Yeah, but do you think it's going to happen, or now that Bragg, people are on to him and what he's doing, it might not happen? I mean, isn't this up to a grand jury?
Well, the prosecutor can do anything he wants with the grand jury.
Okay.
I mean, if he doesn't ask the grand jury to vote on an indictment, there's no indictment. So it's not too late for the Democrats to pull back and say, oops, never mind. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. Bragg has gone a long way down this road, and to simply quit would be embarrassing to him. I guess my point is that there's a reason why there's been a lot of talk about an indictment, but so far, not an indictment. I think Democrats are having second thoughts.
Well, there's again, according to anonymous sources here reporting to the Post, but there's dissension within the ranks of Bragg's office from professional prosecutors who may also not like Trump, but don't want to be made a fool of and don't want the office they work at to look like a political hatchet shop rather than a law enforcement agency.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, Alvin Bragg is a politician who ran for office on a pledge, among other things, to go after Trump.
Yep.
But he's got professional lawyers working for him, who don't want to bring a terrible case.
The question, though, about Trump's political viability, the argument was made similarly in 2016 that the only guy who couldn't beat Hillary Clinton was Donald Trump, and then this is a difficult case to prove beyond reasonable doubt, but arguably you could say the only person who could have beat her in 2016 may have been Donald Trump because of the turnout that he generated and the composition of it. So I know there's people that are suggesting that DeSantis Trump 2024 is like Clinton Obama 2008. I'm not so sure that's the case. What's your take on that?
Well, I think Trump has done so much to damage himself. He lost in 2020. Let's start with that. He's 0-1 against Biden, and I don't think Trump has done anything in the last 2 years to strengthen his standing with the American people. And on the contrary, his judgment is so poor. He keeps doing things that just cement the negative images that so many have of him. And this case we're talking about is another great example of that, Dan. He goes on Truth Social and he posts a picture of himself wielding a baseball bat next to a picture of the DA, Alvin Bragg. And that's just terrible judgment. He deleted that picture. He realized, oops, wait a minute, that's a mistake.
Or maybe his attorney told him to.
Who knows, right? And he put a couple of long rants up on Truth Social, in one of which he's talking about potential death and destruction if Bragg indicts him. And, of course, the Democrats jumped all over that. He's threatening violence. He's going to turn out the rioters like on January 6th, and they're bringing back, memories of that incident and so forth. And I know Trump has his fans, and there are a lot of them, and I think he did a lot of good things as president, and there's a lot of things I like about Donald Trump. But I think he has shown such poor self-destructive judgment so many times that I don't think he's electable in 2024.
I hear that argument. I mean, I'm not dismissing out of hand by any stretch. I just don't know. There's a P.T. Barnum quality to him that where we look at it through sort of a conventional political lens, we see one thing, and it's a little bit of the Rashomon effect. And people who don't live, their lives in the day-to-day politics, they look at it and they see something very different. And what he really does always is frame himself as one of two choices. It is either go with Alvin Bragg and Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, or go with me. And for a lot of people that are center-right, that's an easy choice. And, and he understands something, too. He's got to win a primary before he wins a general. And I think he's positioning himself, and I think this development with Bragg has helped him immensely politically.
Oh, I think it's helped you, but bear in mind that the Democrats want the same framing that Trump does. They also want to say, well, this is binary. Joe Biden may be a senile and ineffective old guy, but it's him or Trump.
Well,
that's
I understand.
Exactly the way the Democrats like to see it.
I understand, but they may be miscalculating, particularly depending on where the country is in 2024. I'm not saying it's pretty, and I'm not saying I'm endorsing every choice that Trump makes, but I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in his shoes and think: is what he's doing, does that make sense for him with his specific political interests? And I'm having a hard time seeing how it doesn't.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. No, I think that he does this dance with the Democrats. I think he really kind of collaborates with them, and he wants to frame things the same way they do. And like the Democrats, Trump wants himself to be the face of the Republican Party. In 2020, Trump was running for re-election at the end of what was really a very successful term as president. And of course, COVID was a big factor there. That's got to be taken into account. But the reality is that even when Trump was running as a successful incumbent who could legitimately claim 4 years of peace and prosperity, he couldn't beat the fumbling, stumbling Joe Biden. And I don't think there's any reason to think he's going to be stronger in 2024 than he was in 2020.
Well, what about his? Oh. You can go
ahead.
Well, his tactic at Waco, I was watching it. I liked what he said about education, no mandatory vaccines or mask mandates in any public schools if I'm president. But he was acting out like Ron DeSantis, crying and begging for his help when he ran for governor of Florida. And the crowd seemed eerily quiet to me as he was doing that, and it felt very uncomfortable. So that we just can expect that until 2024, him.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, here's Donald Trump, and he knows his chief rival for the nomination is Ron DeSantis, and he's launching attacks on him. Until now, DeSantis has stayed out of it and has only been complimentary toward Trump. But speaking of COVID, DeSantis made a very good point in an interview the other day. He was asked about Trump and differences between the two of them, and he said, well, one difference is how we handled COVID. Florida was the free state, and we all know that. Whereas it was Trump who was going along with all these shutdowns, and Trump actually gave Anthony Fauci the Presidential Medal of Freedom, I think it was. He said, and DeSantis said, well, I would not have given Fauci a medal. So I think there's a lot, apart from the fact that he's just got a tremendous record as governor of Florida, which he obviously does. I think there's a lot that DeSantis has here to fire back with.
Well, that's it. So now we're getting somewhere too, because to me, if you want to go after Trump in a Republican primary, it is not this sort of high hat. Oh heavens, the tweeting or the truth socialing. Oh, that's this comment and that comment. All that does is rally Trump's base. But if you want to present things that Trump said and did about COVID, that's a different story. And he's got some vulnerability there. And people who are erstwhile Trump supporters are pointing it out. I mean, for example, Justin Hart reminded us of this tweet from Trump at the end of April of 2020. Despite reports to the contrary, Sweden is paying heavily for its decision not to lock down. The United States made the correct decision. And, of course, in retrospect, no, we did not. And a lot of us knew it at the time. And Justin Hart points out it wasn't until August at Scott Atlas's arrival that Trump changed his mind and moved away from what Fauci and Birx were recommending across so many fronts when it came to COVID. So there's a real reckoning on the merits there, and you need to present it to people in a dispassionate way, not in the way of like, how dare you, or Trump's rhetoric, or he's unelectable. I just think you need to go back and say, when these judgments had to be made in real time, Trump made these decisions and DeSantis made those decisions, and who do you think made the right decisions? I think you got to be pretty cool in how you present that, and a little bit less moral indignation in the direction of Trump. Yeah,
I think you're right about that, and I think it's telling that that's exactly where DeSantis went the first time he's asked in an interview to differentiate his record from Trump's, that was the first thing he brought up. And I think you're right, Dan. I think it's a powerful theme. And there is a broader point here, and that is that we all know Trump is not a traditional conservative, right? He's his own kind of unique flavor of conservatism. But one sign of that is that he does not have the sort of intuitive skepticism of government power, Dan, that you have and I have and Ron DeSantis has and most Republicans have. Trump, I think we saw it here. Trump didn't have any problem with exercising massive government power in a way that really limited the freedom of the American people.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. John Hinderaker, president of the Center of the American Experiment, contributor Powerline, powerlineblog.com. John, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Dan. Bye-bye.
Thank you, too. It was great being with you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Writing a book with Christian morals